one of the things we want to talk about was just sort of a different or fresh look at economic development. We've been doing things since 2008 just a little bit different, particularly than other rural economic development organizations do. So we want to talk to you a little bit about that and sort of how we got from where we started to where we're at today and what that's done for us. And we've gained a ton of traction. We've gained a lot of traction in our marketing efforts. We've gained a lot of traction in our economic development efforts. And so we want to share with you a little bit about that and what that means. I know in a group this size it's difficult sometimes to know how much experience people have in economic development, so there'll probably be some slides that are elementary to you, and I apologize for that. We'll make sure everybody is on the same page. But just, I guess as we get started, David mentioned 70 projects. I just want to give you a little sort of history of where we've come from. We were a typical rural economic development organization representing one community in one county, just like back in 2008, February 2008. When I first came to the organization, I was handed a hot list. I still don't know what that means to this day. There were about 8 to 10, I think, or so contacts, company contacts of people who my predecessor had worked with. So we contacted those folks, and that didn't get us very far. But through some of the things we're going to talk about today, as Dave mentioned, we're working over 70 projects currently today in our office, so it equates to quite a few more than 70 a year. And so we want to talk a little bit about that, how we've gotten to where we're at, and sort of show you some of those things and what that's meant to us. So I wanted to step back just a second and talk to you about our organization, how it got started. We used to actually do economic development in Moberly through the Chamber. Back in 1988, a group of people decided it was important to have a full-time, keeps cutting out, sorry, full-time economic development organization. And so they established MADC back in 1988. So obviously those of you that are familiar with economic development know the goal behind the organization is to create new investment, create jobs, enhance the quality of life, and then increase our tax base for our taxing jurisdictions. So you can see some of the companies that our organizations worked with over the last few years. You'll probably recognize a number of those names. Back in 2008, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, we had a familiarization tour where we brought a site consultant into our area. We do that quite a bit. One of the things that our board learned from that person, we had already been sort of talking about this regional concept and partnering together and working together and pooling of resources and the benefits that we could all receive from that. And of course that was those conversations going on with our board, and then we had a gentleman with a suit and tie on come in from outside the area and say the same thing, and all of a sudden it was gospel. And so that's kind of how this started back in 2008. We started working on the expansion opportunities. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can see over the last couple of years some of the expansions and counties that we've added to our partnership. We are a public-private partnership. We are a private corporation, but we do obviously contract with public organizations as well as our private funding that we receive as well. We have a 12-member board. Several of those are here today if you have questions for them about our organization. Just quickly on our staff, you've met David and myself, and these are actually the folks that do the real work in the office. Tina came to us, I think, about 20-year career with GE Capital, and Tina is working full-time with us, and Christy's still working part-time with us. And so we're very fortunate to be able to have a staff in our office that can handle the number of projects that we just talked with you about each day. Partnerships is really the key. We can't obviously do things alone. You know that. Obviously, when you try to do things individually, there's a limit to what you can do. So from our perspective, the partnerships are key. You're going to hear us talk today a lot about partnerships and people that we work with, resources that we're able to bring to the table and support a business because of those partnerships. So just quickly, at the international level, we work with a number of American Chamber of Commerce, whether that's China or Germany, those types of things, Midwest U.S., China. We have spoken many times on behalf of the U.S. Embassy, particularly in foreign markets, talking about foreign direct investment into the United States. At a state level, we work with the Department of Economic Development. Many of you are probably familiar with the Missouri Partnership, which is our business attraction arm. David just got back from DC with a trip with them representing both the state of Missouri as well as our region. And then of course, we spend a lot of time with our legislators in Jefferson City, back in our areas as well, talking with them about the things that we need for the business environment to try to be more effective in bringing more business and expanding our current businesses in the area. And then of course, MADC and Hawthorne, which are state organizations for economic developers. At a regional level, we did partner with you at one point in time through CORE. Back when you all were involved in CORE, which is a regional economic development group, so were we. We do still, actually I think we partnered with 3 regional groups at that time. We do currently still partner with one, Northeast Missouri Development Partnership. We also work with our regional planning commissions, EMU Extension, SBTDC, a number of different organizations, which you'll see here in just a second, that are important to what we do. Obviously, we spend a lot of time with our city councils, our county commissions, our industrial club, which is our private funding, and the list kind of goes on and on. Purpose, obviously, as you know, for economic development, business retention, expansion is probably where we spend the majority of our time. I think a lot of times people don't realize when we're doing business attraction, when we're out doing things, there's somebody else in our backyard trying to steal what we have. So we spend a lot of time with our existing businesses, talking with them about hopefully expansion opportunities, unfortunately sometimes downsizing opportunities, and how we can help their employees find new jobs, training opportunities that are out there. Obviously, as you know, a great percentage of job creation comes from our existing employers, so we spend quite a bit of time with them. Business attraction, obviously, is the fun side of economic development. That's what particularly the city councils and particularly the mayors and the governor seem to like. Everybody likes to come cut ribbons and cut cake, as David says, and have a glass of punch. And so that's always a good time to talk about that as well. Of course, business attraction is a very, very competitive part of what we do. I would tell you that over the last 10 years, roughly 2,000 large projects are cited across the United States. I would argue with you that because of recent economic times, that number is down, but that's a 10-year average, so we'll let it stand at that. There are 15,000 people that do what David and I do every day full-time, plus all the people that do it part-time. So it's a very, very competitive arena, as you can imagine. Entrepreneurship, especially in the last few years, has become very, very important to us. We spend a lot of time. We have a number of support teams available to support both existing businesses that want to expand, as well as folks who are starting new businesses. We'll talk about Grove Mid, Missouri here in a little bit. I think there's a card on your table about Grove Mid, Missouri as well. So business retention expansion, I just wanted to mention that to you. We do spend a lot of time making regular visits to our existing employers. We do ask our contracting entities to tell us who those major employers are that they want us to spend time with. One of the things we don't want to do is step on anybody else's toes. We don't like to get in turf wars with area chambers or Main Street organizations, those types of things. So we try to work in our realm, let the chambers and Main Street work in their realm. A lot of times we're asking them to assist chambers and Main Street folks, especially when it comes to federal, state, or local level incentive programs, putting together financing packages, those types of things. But for the most part, we're working with the major employers in our areas. We spend regular amounts of time with them through our visits, sharing with them opportunities about state opportunities, about import-export training, maybe cooperative marketing or advertising opportunities that are out there with the state or other organizations. We created about 4 or 5 years ago now, I think, the Moberly Area Employers Training Consortium, which was established to help our employers have a place to bring, actually to work together to bring professional training opportunities to our area. So our major employers aren't sending 2, 3, 4, 5 people out to larger markets, Chicago, other places for overnight stays, missing days of work, causing issues with their processing, those kinds of things. So the training consortium has been designed as a cooperative opportunity to bring professional training here so that we don't have people missing work and we can allow our employers to spread their training dollars, which has been a big impact for them as well. Spend a lot of time talking about labor data, labor sheds, commuting patterns, wage and benefit surveys. Obviously, that's critical to our existing businesses to make sure that they're competitive in the marketplace, helping them understand wait periods, and particularly we're spending a lot of time, as you can imagine right now, talking about healthcare. So those are the types of things we do as well. David and I spend a lot of time traveling as we're doing that. David far more than I do, but as we're doing that, spending time talking about our existing businesses, business-to-business marketing, making sure people are aware of the products and services that are being produced in our 3 counties that we currently represent every day. And oftentimes that leads to opportunities for new contracts for those companies and making people aware of the supply chain that already exists here in our area. I mentioned expansions and downsizing. Have a number of resources that we can bring to the table for our businesses, business counseling, debt restructuring, access to capital, all of those types of things. Entrepreneurship, I wanted to touch on our Grove Mid, Missouri program. We have a number of resources that we bring to the table: business plan development, pro formas, access to capital, all those things, again, for both expanding businesses and new businesses. I guess really sort of the crux of the system is, if you look at SBA statistics or other statistics about business startups, you'll see anywhere from 90 to 95 or more % of new businesses fail within the first 5 years, depending on whose stats you're reading. One of the other things many people don't know, though, is the opposite of that is true in the case of franchise businesses. A lot of times people don't realize that. So we looked at that to say, what's the difference between a typical startup business and a franchisee? The difference is the structure that's in place from the franchisor to help the franchisee. While Grove Mid Mo is not a franchise program, we don't charge for those services. It does, the goal behind that is to establish the same type of structure, to put that behind every business that's growing in our area or every business that's starting in our area, to provide them the same opportunity of success that maybe some of the other franchisees might have because of that. So there's coaches and mentors involved, there's online resources, there's an investor network, which I think is probably the most important part. You've probably seen the same thing in your area over the last few years. We've had literally hundreds of projects that we get put together, great ideas, and we get to the lending institutions, and maybe the lending institutions requiring a 65-35 or 70-30 scenario. Most of you know, most of the entrepreneurs we work with, even with the help of family and friends, have a difficult time putting together 10 to 15% of their project. So we have a gap in the financing. And before, all those projects sort of just died on the vine. There really wasn't anything we could do to put those together. We now have an investor network as a part of Grow Big Missouri that comes alongside, invest that capital, and we've got a couple of examples, I think, in the slideshow here for you. Help our banks get those deals put together and help our entrepreneurs move forward with their ideas. So glad to give you more information. I won't spend a lot of time on that today. We did also write a book that we were co-authors in called The Organic Entrepreneur Economy. It's on Amazon if you have interest in learning more about that program. I was going to show you a video really quickly about that, but in the interest of time, I'll probably skip through that. Marketing efforts, I mentioned to you, we spend a ton of time with marketing. Our region, I can tell you today that we spend more today, if you add in our time, David's time, and my time, we spend more today on marketing than my entire budget was at MAEDC when I arrived in 2008. And that's frankly one of the benefits of our pooling of resources and our partnership, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But it's allowed us to have a far more aggressive marketing effort when we're out looking for new business investment. So obviously we're working with state leads from the Department of Economic Development, from the Missouri Partnership. We have lead generation partners. We do a lot of familiarization tours where we bring site consultants and other decision makers and influencers into our markets, walk them through our buildings, take them through our sites, allow them to meet with stakeholders in the area, talk about some of the benefits of doing business here. That's an expensive venture. It costs us a lot of money to do that, but there's really not a better thing we can do than to have those boots on the ground in our area, in those buildings. In fact, not long ago, probably about a year or so ago, we had a site consultant in for a familiarization tour that stopped right in the middle of our tour, took his cell phone out of his pocket, called a client from one of our buildings. That's what you want. You want them to understand what assets are available here. We do a number of trade shows. We do some print advertising. I think there's a couple things on your tables there if you want to take a look at those. We do those typically in partnership with the Missouri Partnership or others. I'm not much of a static ad type person. I like advertorials, so I think a couple of things that are there are advertorials that tell a little bit of a story about our market, and of course our websites and Facebook and LinkedIn and all those good fun things. Again, another video I was going to show you at the time. I'm going to kind of skip over that and just get sort of to the meat of what we wanted to talk with you about today. Obviously, the regional concept, I'm sure you've heard about regional concepts in economic development for a number of years. This is not a new concept. Communities have been working together for years. Counties have been working together. I have to tell you, it's a little hard to get by the Friday night football stuff, but once you get past that, because we do play each other in football, right? Once we get past that, we can work together. But I also tell you that there are states that are working together. They even have super regions now in the northern part of the United States. Those territories are working with Canada right now in super regions. So it's amazing to watch how regionalism grows and how people see the benefits of that. Obviously, there are a number of benefits. It helps expedite the lead process. Helps us with our marketing efforts when we're looking at pooling resources and marketing a particular area. There's more assets and buildings and sites available. Obviously, there's a larger workforce when we look at those community patterns. There's a significant cost savings for collaboration, that's for sure. And then, of course, our site selection consultants. If you've ever worked with a site consultant or a corporate real estate representative, you know this. They do not see city boundaries. They do not see county boundaries. They don't see state boundaries. They don't care. They look at a region of a country because of the assets that are there. They don't care if it's in this city or that city. They look for a site that fits their needs, that's in a region of a country that fits their needs and have the resources that they need. Sometimes that's transportation related, sometimes that's natural resources. It just kind of depends on each of those. So it does save them quite a bit of time. So we talked a little bit about CORE, and I don't mean to pick on CORE, but this was the thing that we were all involved in at one point. So I bring that up just to share with you. There are some inherent issues with the normal regional concept, which we faced. Some of those are, obviously, we had individual county economic development groups. So in CORE, for instance, we had 12 economic developers that went back and reported 12 different boards. And so making decisions was very difficult. What are our target markets? How do we spend our money when we move forward, when we're pooling our resources? Obviously, those counties that were involved in that had tremendous differences in the assets. They also had diverse interests, and of course the decision process was very cumbersome. So sometimes, while the concept seems great, oftentimes it becomes difficult to make decisions moving forward because it just becomes difficult with people having to report back to other boards as well. Obviously, there's inherent issues with individual county efforts as well. The cost obviously is the biggest thing, cost of entry and ongoing. Obviously, there's competition to think about. And then, of course, the duplication of services, having people right next door to each other, 8 miles away from each other. Everybody's got a staff, everybody's got an office, everybody's got a website, everybody on and on and on and on and on. And we continue to duplicate those services. So in 2008, we started talking about a different approach to regional economic development, which is basically creating a regional effort with one governing board. So when we talk about regional economic development, there is no umbrella organization and then other economic development organizations. Our organization is the economic development organization for all 3 counties we serve. The board members that sit on our board are board members from all the counties. In fact, Chuck is our Monroe County Partner Board, who is also the chairman of the board this year and next for, I assume the next, maybe I shouldn't have seen that. I think as long as he says yes, he'll also be the chairman again next year for us too. So, which I think speaks to our board's commitment to our partner counties. And so that's very, very important for them to be involved. And so we talked a little bit about some of the benefits of our effort to the Department of Economic Development. Missouri Partnership, obviously, again, expedites the lead process, gives us more buildings and sites in consideration. I'll demonstrate that for you here in just a second. And then, of course, additional enhanced enterprise zones and certified sites and all of the things that really are part of our toolbox that help us attract more people to the area. McCallum Sweeney a number of years ago, in fact, Ed's passed now, those of you that are familiar with McCallum Sweeney, I think there's a picture in here of Ed still. I probably should update this slide. But a number of years ago, back in 2008, I mentioned to you there was a gentleman that came with a suit and tie, and we were already talking about this, and once he said it was gospel, that's our guy. And one of the things that he mentioned to our board was he's not going to take the time to come to a single city or single county effort and visit sites. It's not a good use of his time. He doesn't have that kind of time. It's not a good use of his clients' resources to get on a plane from the East Coast or West Coast and fly to Kansas City or St. Louis and drive 2 hours to Moberly to look at one site that may or may not be a good site and one building that may or may not be a good building. It just doesn't make any sense. They're not going to do it. So when we started talking about those types of things at a board level, we started thinking about, well, how can we be more, how can we work together with others around us to be more effective as a group in economic development? And so some of the things that we've learned. This is one from Dean Barber, who's from Barber Business Advisors, one of the site consultants that we work with regularly out of Dallas. And he was here just a couple of years ago for one of our familiarization tours. And he mentions in here, actually, there's an article on our website that talks about it as well, that it's the only way, frankly, it's the only way for rural counties to effectively compete today is by working together. And you can talk about resources, limited budgets, you can talk about wasting of time, you can talk about the fact that the people who are doing it are telling you that. I have sometimes had elected officials argue with me about this concept. And there's really not much of an argument. I'm not going to argue about it. When the people who do it every day for a living, that are making announcements of new Toyota facilities and all these other things, are telling me this is what they want and this is what their client wants, I'm not a very smart person, but I'm going to listen to that. It makes sense to me because these are the people who do it every day. So we've learned and adapted based on what these folks have told us their clients want to be effective in economic development. So these are some benefits that are we think are available to all of the counties that we partner with. Obviously, a larger number of counties benefits all of us in that regional concept. A larger number of assets. Obviously, a lower cost of entry for economic development. We talked a little bit about the offices and all of those things. It reduces the competition. I think this is an important one. We had counties that were sitting next to each other, with one county spending $250,000 on economic development and one county spending $30,000 on economic development. And the county was spending $30,000 was about to fire their economic developer because they weren't getting anything done. Wonder why. So now we're talking about eliminating all of that, pooling all of those resources to be more effective as a group in what we're doing. Access to our MADC contacts and relationships, which obviously is an important part of what we do. We talked about the seat on the board and, of course, the marketing benefits. The pooling of the resources, I can tell you, David can tell you from normal rural economic development groups that we work with regularly, most of them see between 3 to 5, but maybe if they're lucky, $10,000 in their marketing budget each year. By the time they pay their staff, pay the economic developer, and pay the light bill, and everything else that comes along, they might have $5,000 to $10,000 left in their marketing budget. I don't know what you do with that kind of money to try to attract a new business to your area. That's not much to work with. I mentioned to you before, we spent today more than our entire budget was. in 2008, which provides a very aggressive marketing effort for us. In fact, David, at conversations we were talking about on the way down here, was complaining because he didn't get to sleep in the truck, because I wanted to know about the conversations that took place in Washington, D.C. with some site consultants that we're working with. So trade shows, advertorials, we promote the region constantly. Spending a lot of time traveling. I'm glad to answer questions about these later if you want to know more in depth about those things. Our area is regularly recognized. I think you see a couple of those here in trade industry development and other trade magazines around the country as well. The pooling of the resources allows us to have marketing efforts that allow us to work over, as I mentioned, over 70 projects currently. One thing I think that's important, roughly 20 of those projects that we're currently working are from state leads. So if we were the typical rural organization with a very limited marketing resource budget, we would have to wait for the state to bring us leads. We'd be working probably somewhere less than 20 projects right now in our office. But because we're able to pool resources and have an aggressive marketing effort, we're working over 70 projects in our office. We have obviously a stronger message by the pooling of the assets. So we have multiple regional airports, several Class 1 railroads, river ports, dual rail service site. So each of our counties have assets that the other counties don't have, which strengthens the overall message collectively as we're sitting somewhere talking with people about why they want to do business in our region. And that's really the key. All of those resources combined create a stronger message, a stronger reason why somebody wants to get on that plane and fly to Kansas City or St. Louis and drive 2 hours to come look at sites. Now instead of one site or one building, they're looking at 6 or 8 sites or 6 or 8 buildings in a region. It's much easier for them to justify the expense and time to come and see what's going on in our region. Again, the pooling of inventory, and of course we have 2 full-time economic development professionals who graduated from UGI, which makes it a little bit easier to handle that level of service. I mentioned to you additional sites and buildings. These are some projects that we've recently worked. Vest Fiber, FinSpeed, and JC Solutions were projects that we were working. I don't think we even had 3 counties at the time, but we had 5 buildings in consideration for each of those projects. Our competitors had 1 each. We're not going to win every one of those. We're not a perfect location for everybody. You're not a perfect location for everybody. We know that. But at the end of the day, I'll take 5 to 1 odds all day long on my competitors. GAF project, there's a little article there from Trade and Industry Development. We recently won a CC Award, Community Impact Award for a $165 million project that we announced last year, which was with GAF Shingle Manufacturing Company. We actually had 2 finalist sites of the finalist list for GAF. One was our Monroe City site, which is a dual rail serve site, and one was ultimately the site that was selected, which was Moberly. So not only did we have multiple sites in consideration, but we had multiple sites that were finalists for that company when the final selection was made. Additional assets, obviously the complementary counties have 4-lane interstate, dual rail. Those of you that are familiar with economic development know that every project comes with some sort of list of requirements. Maybe it's proximity to 4-lane interstate, maybe it's proximity to the airport, maybe it's electric related or gas related, or maybe it's proximity to river ports, whatever it is. Every company, people say, well, why don't you just bring this company to our community? Yeah, I wish it worked like that, but typically every opportunity has with it a set of parameters that we have to meet. So our goal and what we commit to our partners is we will present every site and every building that fits those parameters. If it doesn't fit those parameters, we're not going to waste people's time, because it's wasting their time. It tarnishes our reputation, our relationship with them. We don't want to waste time, but we will obviously submit every site and every building that fits those parameters. And so those parameters, again, may be interstate, maybe dual rail access, maybe river access, maybe proximity to a certain university because of some program they have, all of those types of things. Spin-off projects is a big thing. Obviously, as we land larger projects, we're working with a number of smaller companies now that want to locate small distribution centers and other things around the GAF facility to service that facility. So those are our leads that we're working with in our partner counties right now, actually in all 3 of our partner counties right now. And then, of course, I mentioned to you a little bit about having 2 full-time economic developers. You all do have an EB5 regional center here at the lake. I know when I mention that to people, oftentimes they kind of give me the look. They don't know that. You do have an EB5 regional center. We had the first EB5 regional center in our region in Missouri. Unfortunately, USCIS was unable to disconnect the failed Mamtech project with our EB5 regional center, so they terminated it. So we now have a partnership in place with your regional center, which expands the boundaries of your regional center from the lake counties up to our counties that we serve, in place for us to use that as an opportunity. Mentioned to you projects. Recent projects that we've announced have created over $220 million of investment, over 770 jobs, and over $30 million in annual payroll. Those are all larger projects. Of course, we've had smaller retail projects and other things that we don't include in those numbers as well. But I think when you step back and take a look at that and the economic times that we've been through in the last few years, we're pretty happy with that in a rural area. We're not St. Louis, we're not Kansas City, we're not Springfield. We're Moberly, we're Monroe City, we're Glasgow, we're Fayette, we're Paris. That's who we are. So for us in our rural areas that we serve, we're very happy with the amount of activity that we've had in recent economic times. Current projects we mentioned to you, this just gives you an idea of the types of investment, from a $30,000 investment to well over $500 million investment, the types of job creation. We did host a number of familiarization tours in 13 and 14. We've hosted over 40 site visits with corporate real estate representatives and site selection consultants of companies that are actively looking to either expand or do their first project in each of the last 2 years. I'm very happy about that amount of activity. In fact, I think it's the week of April 23rd, we have our next Grow Bend, Missouri event. We have 3 site visits the same week. We're trying to do an entrepreneurial event. So we're going to be calling on some of our board members to help us get people to the right place while we're doing that this week. But this gives you just a little idea of the types of sectors that those are in. Obviously heavily in manufacturing because of the workforce that we currently represent in the areas that we work with. Some of the recent projects we've worked, in fact, we were just talking about 2 more expansions in Monroe City on the way down here that we're working on. 230 jobs in it was about an 18-month period of time over in Monroe County, and the majority of that was in Monroe City. We have one company that's gone from 60 jobs, over 460 jobs in Monroe City, which is a community of about 1,500 people. So people that tell me that economic development, particularly large manufacturing firms, can't happen in small towns, yeah, let's go talk to Monroe City. Other recent announcements include a number of things, again, across the board in terms of size, those types of things. I think those are all within the last year that you're seeing up there, maybe a year and a half, somewhere in that vicinity. One of the things we work very heavily, particularly for merchants in the area, is working when we have transmission lines and pipelines going through. We're constantly working 2 to 3 years ahead of those things with the people that are making decisions where those construction offices are going to go. That dumps millions of dollars. I mean, every hotel's full. People are creating campgrounds for trailers, and all kinds of things are happening because it's a big, big impact in our area. So we're constantly recognizing that and trying to make sure that happens in our area. We have 6 enhanced enterprise zones, 3 certified sites, and 2 certified site applications in play right now with the Department of Economic Development. And all 3 of our counties are work-ready community in progress status. We're finishing some testing of every high school senior in the 3 counties that we currently serve right now. Once that's done, we'll be ready to go. So I do want to share this video with you really quickly from the mayor of Monroe City. If I can get it to work. There we go. I don't know where our volume's at, so bear with me here.
Really, I think down the road, when we look back, we're going to see our partnership with MAEDC as the turning point in this community. We had all the good intentions in the world of moving forward with economic development, bringing new business to town, helping our current businesses expand, but we really lacked the knowledge and expertise to get that done. And we knew we had to partner for economic development, and partnering with Moberly Area Economic Development Corporation was the clear choice. And they're extremely responsive. They do things that we can, on our own, could never accomplish. They bring the expertise, they bring the site selectors, they bring the businesses, and they bring the connections with the state legislators that we have to have in order to get things done. Prior to partnering with MAEDC, we were, we were struggling to stay above water and work on projects on our own. And of course, myself and the aldermen, we're all part-time people. We all have full-time jobs elsewhere. We have a city staff that does an excellent job, and they all wear multiple hats. Really, by partnering with MAEDC, we get that full-time economic development expertise that we need that we can never afford on our own. We can't send people to visit with site selectors in other states and other countries and And we're part of a region now that has assets that we don't have. Here in Monroe City and Monroe County, we have great rail access in multiple different locations. We have 4-lane highway, but we don't have river access. We don't have an interstate that runs through Monroe County. And by being part of the Moberly region, almost every project that comes along can be considered by them because there's some place within their region that has the assets that the site selector is looking for. And I know there's many times that the site selectors come and they want to look at a particular place in Randolph County, but Corey or David will convince them to come up and take a look at Monroe City while they're here. And we may end up making a short list because they saw something that they had no idea was going to be a benefit to them.
So I know we're running short on time. Just wanted to mention a couple things about Grow Mid-Mo really quickly with you as well. We do spend a lot of time with small business as well. And there's a card on your table. There's information available. I didn't show you any videos today. I have a couple of those that just talk about some of the success stories that we've had, again, with the gap financing and bringing some of those to reality. But because of time today, we'll skip those. But I did want to leave some time for questions. So if there's any questions that you might have or comments that you might have, I'd be glad to take those. I'm going to skip the rest of these slides. So, yes, sir.
So can you tell us what your annual operating budget is and how are you funded exactly? Are you totally privately funded? Is there a combination of private and public funding?
There's a combination of the two. We're probably around, we have a holding company that owns some Randolph County assets that are separate, but if you look at just MAEDC, probably about $500,000 a year is our budget, somewhere in that vicinity. And I'd say probably, well, it used to be a lot larger percentage of private. Now that we've added additional counties, it's probably 75% comes from the public sector, and maybe 70%, 30% comes from the private sector.
And Corey, what's
Yes.
the breakdown, the lowest amount and the highest? Can you say that on those investors?
Financial support?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have individuals that give us, $250 a year, all the way up to, corporations that give us tens of thousands of dollars a year.
Okay.
On the private side, of course, the public's a little bit different because of our contracts. That's based on size and population, those kind of things.
Now, you say you represent 3 counties. How do you juggle the interest? I understand certain sites are more appealing, but what if you have competitive sites? How do you juggle and keep those counties happy looking for the same
Well,
items?
sometimes it can be a challenge. In the early parts, it's very easy because each project has parameters, and so it's rare that we find, we might find sites in all 3 counties that fit those initial parameters, and then we let sort of the companies and the site consultants, as they visit, look at that real estate, whether it's a site or a building, and they sort of make those eliminations themselves. So, and that's kind of how the process works in economic generally, whether they're looking at 100 communities or whether they're looking at 6, they go out and make those real estate visits, look at those, see what fits, what doesn't, and then they create short lists or finalist lists, those types of things. So the challenge for us is, because the companies are usually making those decisions based on some sorts of resources that are either available or not available. The challenge for us is when we get to that short list or finalist list, there's usually maybe 2 to 3, sometimes 6, usually a low number of sites that are in that finalist list. When we have 2 sites in the finalist list, which has happened to us on multiple occasions, that's where it gets difficult for us. So oftentimes what we'll do is step back from that until the company makes a decision between the 2 communities. Once they make that decision, then we step back in and take our normal turnkey approach to the project, walking it all the way through. But typically we'll work with the communities to help them understand what local. We spend probably more of our time working on federal, state, and local level incentives when it comes to that point, making them aware of programs that are available, and letting the council, or if it's in the county commission, make the decision on what they want to offer in terms of incentives and those types of things, and letting them know what others are offering.
Follow up on the incentives. What kind of incentives locally are available?
Depends on the community. There are some, Monroe City is a very, very competitive community, so they're very, I don't want to say they're very creative in what they do. Typically, at a local level, historically, about the only thing that can be done is some sort of tax abatement. So depending on the size of the project, you can do a real estate tax abatement. If it's a large enough project, you could look at a Chapter 100 scenario for a personal property tax abatement, those types of things. So we've done all of those things. If you were in our boardroom, you probably saw a picture of that earlier. There's shovels around the wall from all those projects. I could tell you which programs have been used on all of those. We do also have some communities, like Monroe City, for instance, operates its own electrical system, and so they offer some incentives on that side as well. Most of our area are either served by Ameren or served by co-ops, and so we're not able to do that everywhere. So some communities have the opportunity to do this. Some communities do cash benefits, believe it or not, for each of the jobs that are created. And of course, there's clawbacks. One of the things that we provide as a service for our clients is, I mentioned to you, sort of a turnkey scenario. We have an attorney that we work with that works on behalf of the communities and counties that we serve. We do development agreements and clawbacks, talking about what happens if those jobs aren't created, or if they're not created in the time frame we were told they were going to be created, or the investment's not what we were told it was going to be, those types of things. So as we work with that, we're also working with the clawbacks too, and looking at how that's all going to work. But typically, the tax abatement at a local level is the main thing. There's multiple different mechanisms to get there. I mean, there's TIF districts and TDDs, and there's Chapter 100, and there's EEZs, and there's 353s, and we could go on all day. But finding the right mechanism is the key to getting to that. Yes, ma'am.
And on your angel investor program, did you follow a model from another community? And then how did you network with potential investors to put that group together?
Yeah, we did follow a model. We worked with a group out of Kansas City, and actually I didn't mention that. It's a group of serial entrepreneurs. Each of the entrepreneurs that were involved in this have taken multiple companies to success and sold those companies. So they interviewed actually over 100 serial entrepreneurs to talk to them about best practices and then talk with them about their failures to develop this program. So it's a program where we purchased into this program. Really where the purchase came from is the 24-hour resources that are available online. We have some proprietary information. There are 9 modules for new companies and 9 modules for existing companies. And that coaching and mentoring that I mentioned, we kind of walk people through those processes. So that's where we bought into that system. I think there's a Boost Lease Summit, there's a Kansas City group. We just added a Quad Cities group probably about, I'd say 6 months ago. We were the first rural organization to do this. I think we're still the only rural organization, as I recall, just because the cost is very significant to those resources. That's a multi-million-dollar database that's been created with those resources, and so especially upkeep and all the things that go on with that. So there's licensing fees and those types of things. It's not an inexpensive venture to be a part of that. Yes, sir.
2 questions. How do you break out retail versus industrial?
Retail?
Yeah.
Versus
Are
industrial.
you doing retail?
Yes, sir.
You are doing retail?
Yes.
Okay, and secondly, are you a 4-county or 3-county?
3 county.
So Monroe City is...
Monroe County. Monroe City is actually in 3 counties. They're our difficult one to deal with because they're in three counties, so that always makes it fun for us to figure out which industrial park we're looking at.
Monroe, Randolph...
Monroe, Randolph, and Howard counties currently. Yeah. So retail, yes. The question, answer that question is yes.
Because that's always a question. On
Retail.
Yeah.
We're a little bit different from a lot of economic development organizations don't work in the retail realm because of the competition factor, because you do get crucified from time to time. I'll just be flat honest with you. So there are a lot of people that don't work in that. I mean, they want to work with, but in our area, we feel like that's cyclical. In other words, when we bring major employers in to look at the area, the first thing they look at to legitimize the area in their mind is how many national flags you have flying in retail, right? I mean, we know it's a great place to live because we live there, but you got to remember this guy was in China 2 days ago. He doesn't know you from Adam. So they look at those things. So it's important to us. So the reverse of that's also true. When we work with our retail clients, the first thing they ask us is what? How many major employers do you have? How many people do they employ? You know, those types of things. So to us, it all works hand in hand, works together. But I do know a lot of economic development organizations just concentrate on industrial and don't do much with retail. We do both because we feel like it's that important. In Missouri, especially if you haven't lived in Missouri all your life, you understand that property taxes, believe it or not, here is very, very low compared to other states. You go to Polk County, Iowa, and we'll talk. I pay annually here what I paid monthly in Polk County, Iowa, so I'm glad to have that debate with you sometime. But I can tell you from that perspective, though, it's so important for our cities and counties. Sales tax dollars, I mean, that's the key for our cities and counties in their budgets because real estate taxes is such a small portion of their budget. So from our perspective, it's important for us as representing them to do everything we can to increase those sales tax dollars. And again, that goes back to some of the incentives we talked about. You know, if we're looking at a TIF or a SID or 353, those types of things, it's incentivized by those sales tax dollars, so there's a return from those communities when we're working with them, so. Yes, sir.
If you're helping a client evaluate an undeveloped site, how deeply do you go with assisting that client with developers, contractors to build what they want?
We do all that work up front. In fact, they used us as an example a couple years ago at a MEDC conference because we do that all up front. The reason we do that is because we might get phone calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, believe it or not. So we want to have that information available to get out to people without having to call a developer or somebody from the city who may be gone at 5 o'clock. So what we'll do is we have forms that we use to actually go in and take a look at any infrastructure that surrounds that, the total capacity infrastructure, but then the infrastructure that's in place there. We'll want to know pressurization, those types of things. We'll do, especially if we're looking at a certified site, we'll do a phase 1 environmental review. If it requires one, we'll do a phase 2, we'll do a geotech report. I mean, all of those types of things we try to have done up front so that when a company's looking at that particular site, it eliminates risk for them. That's the big key. I mean, you see that happen a lot of times. People will make an announcement and then nothing ever gets built there, and you wonder what will happen. Eventually the sign disappears. Well, probably what happened is somebody did a phase 1 and required a phase 2 and they didn't like what they found. So from our perspective, we find from the site consultants that it expedites their process anywhere from 90 to 120 days. If we can hand them, Dave and I will hand them when they walk in their geotech report and their phase 1 report for that site. It eliminates all the risk, and we put our cities and counties in a position where they can issue a permit as soon as they can possibly get that done. So that's the goal for us, is to have all that stuff done up front, so there's no risk for the company when they're looking at a site. I know you all know this, but farm fields are not necessarily a site, right? So we got to look at the infrastructure around that. We got to look at what it takes to get the infrastructure there. As infrastructure goes, so goes economic development. Water, sewer, electric, gas, you know, those are the things for large projects in particular that we need to have. So we're going to look at those systems with Ameren, with the other utilities that are in place. We're going to look at the total capacities of the systems with the cities, with their engineers, those types of things. I can tell you, Moberly's been very successful in large projects. If you spend any time in Moberly, there's a great deal of industry there. West runs one of those facilities. The reason there's a great deal of industry is because Moberly spends a lot of time building capacity in its system. So currently in Moberly, we have over 5 million gallons a day of capacity in the water and wastewater system, and the entire town uses 1.1 million a day. So as infrastructure goes, so goes economic development. So we spend a lot of time learning about the infrastructure that's either in place or what it's going to take us to get it there. We might do some engineering drawings to look at if it's not there, what it would take to get it there, the timing of that, those types of things. Yes, ma'am.
With the number of companies that you're bringing in, what are the commuting patterns of people? Do they live primarily in that 3-county area? Are they driving in, or?
Well, it depends. Each area is a little bit different, but in Moberly, for instance, our major employers are pulling from as many as 60 miles away. We know that's true in Boonville. We know that's true over in Monroe City as well. So, and Wes can attest to this. I mean, it's not just a few people that are coming 60 miles to work. It's hundreds of people. So we know that sweet spot's 35 to 45 mile radius, but it's as much as 60 miles away. I mean, and it kind of depends. Each city's a little bit different depending on how close they might be to Columbia or other places that have that type of facility. So we do regular labor force surveys. We look at commuting patterns. We do that stuff regularly. One of the things that we partner with NMDP, Northeast Missouri Development Partnership, we're currently doing a 27 county labor survey looking at underemployed, not unemployed, underemployed, what skill sets are out there and that. So we're constantly doing those kinds of things on a regular basis to make sure that we can provide that information. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear from our site consultants over the last couple of years is it's great to have the information about your unemployed people, but we need to know what else is out there, especially in rural areas, to be able to know that they can make that. So we're doing a lot of work right now with underemployed, which of course is a difficult thing. So the community patterns are very important. We map those. We look at where all of our, well, we do it by zip code with the major employers. We map that. We also do that with the retailers. Oddly enough, the retail follows the industry. It's very strange. Out of over 2,500 we did last time, 95 people from our retail didn't fit in the industrial map. Just drawing it on a map. It's kind of interesting to look at those patterns, but we do that as well. Yes, sir.
Speak on the issue of housing.
Housing? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Your thoughts on it?
So we have a number of developers that we work with. Obviously, that's one of the things we hear loud and clear from the school systems. I don't know about your school systems, but the school systems in our area have difficulty recruiting teachers, especially young teachers, because there's not a lot of stock and that they can afford, right? And then some of the things they can afford, they don't want to live in. So that's part of the thing in support of our school systems and helping them recruit teachers, working on that as well. But obviously, with announcements of projects, then we see permits start to be issued very quickly, and that starts to happen. And so, you know, housing obviously is important. We spend a lot of time when we bring our site consultants and our company reps in on our tours that we do with them. We drive them through neighborhoods so that they can see the various levels of housing to make sure that they know that there are various levels of housing available here to both attract and retain good quality employees. So we might show them a $100,000 house, we might show them a $1 million house. We're going to take them through all the neighborhoods and show them that we have those things available to them. To us, it's really about helping them understand what it takes to attract and retain good quality employees in our area. Our goal, as we're bringing even new businesses in, our goal is that those people would hire people from right here. Obviously, you know, we love to have people move in, build new houses. That's great for the communities too. But we also have a number of people that are unemployed or underemployed right here. So the goal will be that the majority of those people will be hired from right here. Obviously, most organizations bring in some sort of a general manager, or plant manager, maybe an engineer or two, those kind of things, and then the rest of the facilities hired from people within. Of course, then that creates issues sometimes other places, and then those people backfill. When that happens, more people come to the community. So we do work with our developers regularly, with the cities. If the cities want incent development, those types of things, we can help them do that. There's mechanisms available for them to do that. So. Any other questions at all? Yes, sir.
How are you compensated?
How am I compensated?
Not you.
Oh,
How like this?
okay. I get a check every 2 weeks. These guys are really nice.
And hopefully it's a nice big check.
Yeah, it's a nice check, absolutely.
So
I gotta say that
how
right
do
here.
the counties and the cities and that sort of thing, what is the cost of?
So we have a matrix that the board uses. That's not really my thing, that's more of a board thing. We have a matrix that we use. Traditionally, it's been done by population with counties. And so there's various levels of population, and there's various fees annually based on those. So it really kind of depends. I mean, sometimes it's one county that can bring it in, sometimes it's multiple counties. So you kind of have to look at, we have to look at staffing levels too. Obviously, we've got a lot going on. So as we start to add more people to the mix, we have to add staff, which comes into play as well. Our goal at the board level, I shouldn't speak for the board, I should let Chuck speak to this, but the goal for our board is to try to provide value for our partners. So we try to look at what we charge counties to be a part of our partnership. In every case so far, they have not been able to do it, they have not been able to do it on their own cheaper. In fact, I know Howard County had mentioned, I think theirs was about $40,000 more than what they pay us, that they thought it would take for them to hire their own economic developer again and provide a budget and those kind of things. So we try to make it a value for our partners, especially for what they're getting. I mean, 2 full-time economic developers, 2 other people in the office, all the resources that are available, our contacts, those types of things, and a huge marketing budget versus trying to do it on your own. So it is based on population and a few other factors, and there's varying levels of that. So it depends on the counties. I know that probably wasn't a great answer to your question. I don't want to speak for the board. How's that? So, yes, sir.
Speaking of population, what's the rough population count of your 3-county area?
Well, if you look at, let's see, I don't know. We always look at it as where our workforce comes from. So let me look at just the 3 county areas for a second. Probably about 50, somewhere around 50,000, just in a rough number. Yeah, we always look at where our workforce commuting patterns are coming from. So if you look at a 35-mile radius of Moberly or some of the other communities that we serve, you take Columbia out of that mix. We like to take Columbia out just because that skews our numbers. You take them out of the mix, there's roughly about 200,000 people. A 35-mile radius, and about 100,000 people, obviously, in the workforce. Depends on whose unemployment numbers you believe. Anywhere from 10 to 12 to 15,000 people available currently. Yes, sir.
How much is Randolph County paying Howard County?
Randolph is more than anybody else because the city of Moberly and let's see, city of Moberly and the county. You want just public funds, not our private funds?
Just rough.
Probably 200,000, a little less than 200,000. Probably 190 some odd thousand, somewhere in there, with Randolph County and Moberly together. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Corey, and again, thank you for bringing your board members down with you, and we really appreciate it. Lori and I, we were just talking, there's a number of LORDAC board members here today, and I think it's important, because I've had this conversation a couple times. The Lake Area Chamber, with our Economic Development Committee, we're not trying to compete with LORDAC. We want to work with LORDAC in moving our community forward. And the whole purpose in bringing Corey and his team in here today was to enlighten us as to alternatives to potentially doing things a certain way. There are other ways to do it. Whether that fits this area, I have no idea. But we thought it was a great opportunity to bring these folks in and let them talk to us about an alternative to what traditionally has been economic development. And Lori and I were just talking about that, and it's just important that everybody understand that this is not a us and them type situation. This is, we're all working on this together, and that together we win. And if we're not together, we won't win. So I hope you enjoyed. Yes, gentlemen.
I just have a question of the cities officials that are here, and maybe the counties. How much do they individually spend on economic development within their city budgets?
Varies. And we're, the RP, our regional planning, they do a percentage of the county and the memberships, and we join that. We're on LORDAC. We do other things.
So you don't have a line item for,
We have economic development, but it varies because, it just changes every year.
but approximately, is it
It's not-
10,000 or
It's
100,000?
not static. I don't know, this year the board put in more. I don't know what they want to do. Mostly it's joining organizations and building them.
How about like Ozark?
We actually don't track it to the dollar. We look at the activities, so it varies significantly. So as for a definite answer, I couldn't give you a definitive answer without going back and actually looking at the numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Says it.
Thank you. If you have any questions and you want to follow up on this, I'm sure that Corey has business cards and Dave, and they'd be happy to have that discussion with you either after the meeting today, or you can call them and talk to them. The other thing is Joe Roger and Jeff Carroll and Bert Westbrook and Rodney Bax. We're all on the Economic Development Committee, and if any of you have any comments or questions concerning that, feel free to call us. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. The chambers, all three chambers are bullish on the area, if you guys haven't figured that out. And we definitely know that this area can move forward, should be moving forward, and what we want to do is we want to help. And maybe we're selfish, but we want to help in moving forward. And so this is one option in moving forward on economic development. So once again, Bankstar One, thank you very much for sponsoring. Thanks to all of our elected and city officials, county officials. We do appreciate you coming today. And I think, Wendy, that's it, isn't it? Thanks to all the chambers, and have a good morning, good afternoon. Thank you.